Cry for the first one. It got a shitty sequel. Cry for the franchise's legacy. This film was horseshit.
Party's over. Here's Johnny.
Hey everyone, it's movie Lover 120 here. And I'm here with episode 23 of my Halloween horror movie reviews, and this Halloween horror movie review is going to be for a sequel. Unfortunately, not a good sequel. It's for a sequel to a 1987 horror film in the vampire genre, and is my favorite vampire movie of all time. Which you all remember, which was last year's review, was, of course, The Lost Boys. The reason I'm holding the disc is because I unfortunately have the whole trilogy because this was the only way I could get the first one on DVD. Yeah, this was the only way I could actually buy the first one on DVD. This was the only way. So now, unfortunately, I own the sequels too. Oh no. Man, why couldn't it just only have the first one at Walmart? Not this. Not the whole entire trilogy of sequels I don't want to watch or own. But anyway, with that being said, I absolutely love The Lost Boys. Probably one of the greatest horror movies of the 80s. My favorite vampire movie of all time. If you have not seen it, please go and watch it. What the heck are you doing? You're missing out on so much. It's really worth checking out. It's an amazing movie. Kind of like, never mind that part, but eventually, Joel Schumacher wanted to make a sequel where Kiefer Sutherland's character survives, and they could have called it The Lost Girls. In a way, and it would have actually had a connection to the first one. But Warner Brothers kept never allowing it to be made. But for some reason, they instead greenlighted this bullshit. They allowed this 20 years later direct-to-DVD bullshit to be made instead. And this movie wasn't even supposed to be a sequel to The Lost Boys. It was supposed to just be called The Tribe and focus on surfing werewolves. Which I guess would have been better than surfing vampires, but instead Warner Bros. Just slapped on Lost Boys, likely to attract fans of the first one to make them rent this, which explains why this made so much money on home video sales, they made a third one. Now, this movie barely has much of a connection to the first one except for one of the characters returning. That's literally it. But anyway, what's the plot of this not-needed fanfic? The orphan and former surfer Chris Emerson and his sister Nicole Emerson, who are, by the way, characters we don't care about in this movie, basically their characters are so... These two are annoying as hell. They just argue. The first minute you see them, he's like, Basically, they have this argument, and Nicole has a typical, why are you such an asshole? Like, yeah, let that be our introduction to the main characters. Like, when you were introduced to the two brothers in the first one, they didn't have this argument. You actually have this argument. They were both protagonists you could care about, and you actually enjoyed watching. Here, these guys, the brother and sister in this are just annoying. You don't care about any of them. They're just carbon copies, lame loser copies of the first film's characters. But anyway, back to that. They move to Luna Bay, expecting to initiate a new life without housing expenses with their Aunt Jillian, but she charges rent to the siblings for a wrecked house. And Chris seeks a job working as board shaper to raise money for the unforeseen expenses. While in town, he meets his acquaintance and also former surfer Shane Powers, who invites Chris to a surfing party. At night, by the way, Shane Powers is actually played by Kiefer Sutherland's son, Angus Sutherland, and he just sounds like this the whole movie. Seriously, his son sounds so bored the whole entire movie. He's like, can I go home? Can I just get my paycheck and go home now? That's literally what he looks and sound. That's what he looks and sounds like the whole movie. If you watch the whole movie, that's literally how bored he sounds. His whole lines sound like he's just bored out of his mind. At night, then the siblings unsuccessfully seek out the board shaper and vampire hunter Edgar Frog in his trailer, trying to find a job, and Chris leaves a message for him. They go to Shane's party, and Nicole stays with Shane and drinks booze offered by him. Later, she becomes a half vampire, and Edgar advises that she drank vampire's blood and can only be saved if the head vampire is killed. The plot of the first one again. Yeah, but Chris and Edgar search the hiding place of Shane and his tribe to save Nicole. So yeah, basically you have the same story of the first one, just remove Alan Frog, only have Edgar Frog come back in the sequel, have two different characters, this time two protagonists you don't give a crap about, or any of these, you don't give a crap about any of these vampires in this movie. Unlike the vampires in the first one, which were great to watch, especially Kiefer Sutherland's vampire, like Kiefer Sutherland's game in the first one, they were so perfect for that. Perfect. They were enjoyable to watch. They were perfectly enjoyable, intimidating vampires. You actually could be afraid of them. They actually seemed very dangerous to be around. Here, these vampires are a joke. These guys don't even act like vampires. They don't even think like vampires. I don't know what they were thinking. The story of this one is exactly the same as the first film. New people move into town with vampires. One of them joins the clan, and is becoming a vampire. The acting was so awful, and there were hardly any vampire moments. This acting felt like acting from a Hallmark movie. Like half of the whole cast, his performance was atrocious. I mean, there was one good actor that at least seemed like he was trying to do a good job in this movie, and that's Corey Feldman. Yeah, Corey Feldman does come back, fortunately, I don't know why they made him come back for this crap sequel, but he seems like the only actor that seems like he's trying in this whole film. Like, he's pretty much the only best part of this movie, and he barely even appears much. Like, he doesn't show up much, and his brother's not even in it. Like, Alan Frog doesn't even appear in this movie. Yeah, they don't even mention Alan Frog, and I believe that, let's see him. I think, like, they do mention Jason Patric. I think they mentioned Jason Patric's, Chris and Nicole mentioned Jason Patric's character, and that other girl from the first one were their parents, and they unfortunately died, but I guess I can see why Jason Patric didn't want to come back for the sequel, because he probably, if Leslie was probably offered to come back, I bet he probably decided to bail so quick because he probably knew how bad this movie would probably be, so I can see why he didn't come back. Yeah, the script was stupid, basically the whole film is stupid, and it has no vampire originality. This is not in any shape or form The Lost Boys. So please don't even waste your time. It's a horrific, cheap, soft porn reject with actors who probably can't cut out in Hollywood, portraying vampires that saw a cheap opportunity to remake a film classic. Wah. I mean, what's more is like every modern horror film of the 2000s, there's frequent one-liner F-bombs and fights and acting, which was probably what the director had to narrow the quality of talent down to. It's basically bunk. And if this scene at the party, we have Chris have this steamy hot sex scene with the girl because that perfectly worked in the first one. We need that to happen. Yeah. And in the post credit scene, Edgar encounters a vampire vampire Corey Haim's character, who's now a vampire. Corey Haim's character, that younger brother in the first one who teamed up with Edgar now. Because that post credit scene was perfectly also needed in the movie. We totally needed that. Oh my god, and this is a good movie to rent if you love Ed Wood films. The story is extremely weak. There's no climax, no clever twists. It is a shot that slightly follows the original Lost Boys worse. The writer focused not on the story, but on the sex and horror to make it interesting. Because that's pretty much what every damn sequel to a good movie does. The directors ditch the story. Instead, they decide to ramp up all the horror cliches, like they ramp up the sex, they ramp up the violence, they ramp up the swearing. This is why I hate a lot of horror sequels. Because a lot of horror sequels do those stupid tropes, and it's annoying. They forget everything good, everything that made the first one actually good, and focus on trying to be more graphic, thinking to get more money. Yeah, I don't mind sex horror, etc., but it needs to actually work in the story. And plus, I don't remember the first Lost Boys even having any sex stuff at all. The first one doesn't even have any sexual things in it. I mean, yeah, there's still horror, but there were no sexual things in the first one. Like in this movie, the story is an afterthought. After I finished watching this movie, I couldn't stop but wonder who the heck signed off on this script. A movie costs a lot of money to make, and I'm surprised that anyone threw money at this script. It's such an insult to people who love the first one. The folks ultimately pay for fools to write movies for us, and yeah, even one of the best reviewers out there, Cody Leach, actually put this on number 3 of the top 10 worst horror sequels, which is a perfectly good spot for it. And even I pretty much have the same criticisms for this movie as he did. Even he perfectly summarized how bad this movie was in this video. You should go check out his worst sequels list. I'll post a link to it in the description below, but yeah, and then this also has such a shitty jump scare around near the climax of the movie. The tribes on this beach with these girls. Then Chris has turned to a vampire so he can sneak into the tribe, trick them into letting him join them, so he can save Nicole. And this one vampire's what he's trying to say is, we're vampires. And the girl thinks he's just kidding, ooh, scary. Ooh, it's scary. And then he's like, no, but seriously, we're vampires! And the way they just deliver it, the way his face just suddenly changes to a vampire face, so yeah, the vampire's face, look at this shitty vampire face right here. They poorly try to make the vampires scarier. They try to make their eyes all black, and their faces all scarred. Which is just dumb as hell. Even the first one's vampires didn't look anything like that. And plus, the makeup looks shit on the vampires. I'm serious. But in the end, I can't believe I wasted 94 minutes of my life watching a scrap-stained toilet paper of a movie. This is 94 minutes I will never get back, and thus I'm very upset. How could they insult the original by making a sequel 21 years late this awful of a bloody disgrace? Oh my god. Anyway, that's it for my rant on Lost Boys The Tribe, and here's how I'm going to rank it. I am going to give Lost Boys The Tribe a 0.5 out of 10. There we go. That's episode 23. And if you're wondering if I'll review the third film, The Thirst, it may be likely, but not this week. Because I will admit, The Thirst is actually a minor improvement over this movie, but it's still a bad sequel too. But anyway, thankfully our next episode will be an actually good movie. Well, then again, guys, you can't just have good movies in these seasons. You gotta review some bad horror movies too. But anyway, next episode will thankfully be a good movie, and we'll go into slasher territory. I'll give you a hint. This film was made during a time when slasher genre or horror genre was really in a bad rut. It was released in 1996, around December, and it saved the slasher genre and is seen as one of as probably easily my tied with Candyman as my other favorite horror movie of the 90s. And I'll give you this quote. What's your favorite scary movie? Yes, if you've guessed Scream, correct. That episode, that's going to be the next episode, will be Scream. The first one. Because I cannot wait to talk about it. I've been meaning to talk about for some time. But until then, that'll be the first episode. Thank you all for watching. If you'd like to want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Movie Lover 120.